धारी श्री श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मरन मोहन जू की जय। नितिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतश्मद श्रील भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्रील गुरुदेव की जय। नितिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतश्मद श्रील भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नितिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतश्मद श्रील भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल शतशतश्मद शिला भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नितिल विष्णु विष्णुपाद अष्टोत्तर शतश्मद शिला भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल विष्णु महाभागवत शिला गोक्षरस बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नितिल विष्णु शिला सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। निष्ठ वैष्णव सार्वभौम शिला जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूप गौरिया गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल पतदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय। नाम चर्चलाय रस ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौरमंडल ब्रजमंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सार्व अभिष्ट व्रत गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्यामा कुंड की जय। संग देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योगमाया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्री what's his name? Saranga Thakur ki jai, I think. Tadiya, I don't know if it says Avirbhav or Tirobhav. Anyways, one of them. Ki Tadiya Shubha Avirbhav Tirobhav Titi ki jai. Shinitai Gaur Pimanande Hari Hari Bo. Alright. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Radhikaya Priyatmane Shri Śrīmad Bhakti Vedanta Narayaniti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Itadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yang Pravrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krityam Daipayano Virahaka Tara Ajuhava Putreti Tanmayataya Taravo Bhinedu Stang Sarva Bhuta Hridaya Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskrityam Narang Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Shrinvatang Swakatha Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Hridantasto Yabhadrani Vidhunoti Suritsatam Nashta Prayeshvavadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Tavai Vasmi Na Jivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayamam Charanantikam Bhaktya Vihina Aparada Lakshay Kshiptashtakama Ditaranga Madhye Kripa Maitam Sharanam Prapana Vrinde Namaste Charana Ravindam Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oops. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let's see who's all there. Hey, what happened to it? Okay. Dandavat pranams, Rupa Manjari Didi and Ganga Didi, Dandavat pranams, Raseshwari Mataji, Haribo, Dandavat pranams, Indira Mataji, and Madhavi Didi, Gargaraji, Prajumna Prabhu, Mantra Murti Mataji. Dandavat pranams, everybody. I just came back from making my application for a student visa, so wish me luck that it works out. All right, so we're oh wait, let's do a recap. 1 second. Okay. So yesterday we read about the qualities of a sannyasi. Also, we read about vanaprastha. Let's just start from here, though, because it's late. What time is it? Oh, yeah, I started late. So let's just read about, okay, the qualities of a sannyasi. A sannyasi is detached, merely keeping the body inhabitable. He is not dependent on anything material. The sannyasi travels on earth, passing only one night in a village. If he wears something, he wears only a loincloth and an outer covering. When there is no necessity, he should not even accept a danda. A sannyasi should wander alone. He should live on alms that have been begged. He should live on alms that are begged. He should be completely satisfied in the self, not dependent on any person or any place. A sannyasi is a well-wisher to all living beings. He is peaceful and completely surrendered to Lord Narayan. The consciousness of a sannyasi. He sees the Supreme Lord beyond cause and effect, pervading everything. He sees everything, composed of cause and effect, resting on the Supreme Lord. He understands the self during deep sleep, dreaming and waking states. He realizes that bondage and liberation are actually illusory. The sannyasi observes the power of time that causes appearance and disappearance of all beings, instead of praising the uncertain life or death. Okay, so now we're going to read other qualities of a sannyasi. What verse? Oh yeah, we're starting from 6. Let me just see. Is that okay that I skipped the vanaprastha section, going over that again? I think so. Nobody mentioned anything. I'm just going to jump right into this. Let's find it. Text 7. Okay. Na shastreshu sajeta nopajiveta jivikam vadavadangstajetarkan paksham kanchana samshayet. Literature that is a useless waste of time. In other words, literature without spiritual benefit should be rejected. One should not become a professional teacher as a means of earning one's livelihood, nor should one indulge in arguments and counter-arguments, nor should one take shelter of any cause or faction. Interesting. Okay, purport by Srila Prabhupada. A person desiring to advance in spiritual understanding should be extremely careful to avoid reading ordinary literature. The world is full of ordinary literature that creates unnecessary agitation in the mind. Such literature, including newspapers, dramas, novels, and magazines, is factually not meant for advancement in spiritual knowledge. Indeed, it has been described as a place of enjoyment for crows, tadvayasam tirtam. Anyone advancing in spiritual knowledge must reject such literature. Furthermore, one should not concern oneself with the conclusions of various logicians or philosophers. Of course, those who preach sometimes need to argue with the contentious contentions of opponents, but as much as possible, one should avoid an argumentative attitude. In this connection, Srila Madhvacharya says, this isn't very relevant for the times now, isn't it? Madhvacharya says, Aprayojan paksham na shangshayat, na prayojana pakshisyan, na vritta shishya bandakrit, na choditasina shastrani, na viruddhani chabhyaset, na vyakhya yopajiveta, na siddham samarachit, evam bhutva yatir yati, tare sharano harim. There is no need to take shelter of unnecessary literature or concern oneself with so many so-called philosophers and thinkers who are useless for spiritual advancement. Nor should one accept a disciple for the sake of fashion or popularity. One should be callous to think these so-called shastras, neither opposing nor favoring them, and one should not earn one's livelihood by taking money for explaining shastra. A sannyasi must always be neutral and seek the means to advance in spiritual life, taking full shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. Na shishyan anubandhanita grantana evabhyased bahun na vyakhyam upayunjita narambham arabhet kvachit. A sannyasi must not present allurements of material benefits to gather many disciples, nor should he unnecessarily read many books or give discourses as a means of livelihood. He must never attempt to increase material opulences unnecessarily. Purport. So-called swamis and yogis generally make disciples by alluring them with material benefits. There are many so-called gurus who attract disciples by promising to cure their disease or increase their material opulence by manufacturing gold. These are lucrative allurements for unintelligent men. A sannyasi is prohibited from making disciples through such material allurements. Sannyasis sometimes indulge in material opulence by unnecessarily constructing many temples and monasteries, but actually such endeavors should be avoided. Temples and monasteries should be constructed for the preaching of spiritual consciousness or Krishna consciousness, not to provide free hotels for persons who are useful for neither material nor spiritual purposes. Temples and monasteries should be strictly off limits to worthless clubs of crazy men. In the Krishna consciousness movement, we welcome everyone who agrees at least to follow the movement's regulative principles: no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, and no gambling. In the temples and monasteries, the gatherings of unnecessary, rejected, lazy fellows should be strictly disallowed. The temples and monasteries should be used exclusively by devotees who are serious about spiritual advancement in Krishna consciousness. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains the word arambhan as meaning matadi vyaparan, which means attempts to construct temples and monasteries. The first business of the sannyasi is to preach Krishna consciousness. But if, by the grace of Krishna, facilities are available, then he may construct temples and monasteries to give shelter to the serious students of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, such temples and monasteries are not needed. Na yater ashrama prayo dharma hetur mahatmana shantasya samachittasya bibrad bibrayar utava tyajet. One second, let me just fix this mic. That's better. A peaceful, equipoised person who is factually advanced in spiritual consciousness does not need to attempt the symbols of a sannyasi, such as the Tridanda and Kamandalu. According to necessity, he may sometimes accept those symbols and sometimes reject them. Is my water bottle anywhere? The blue water bottle? Okay, thank you. Purport. Thank you. 1 second, let me just drink some water. Okay. There are 4 stages of the renounced order of life: Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajacharya, and Paramahansa. Herein, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam considers the Paramahansas among the sannyasis. The Mayavadi impersonalist sannyasis cannot attain the Paramahansa stage. This is because of their impersonal conception of the absolute truth. Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavan iti shabdate. The absolute truth is perceived in 3 stages, of which Bhagavan, a realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is meant for the Paramahansas. Indeed, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam itself is meant for the Paramahansas. Paramo niramat saranam satam. Unless one is in the Paramahansa stage, he is not eligible to understand the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. For Paramahansas, or sannyasis in the Vaishnava order, preaching is the first duty. To preach, such sannyasis may accept the symbols of sannyas, such as the danda and kamandalu, or sometimes they may not. Generally, the Vaishnava sannyasis, being Paramahansas, are automatically called Babajis, and they do not carry a kamandalu or danda. Such a sannyasi is free to accept or reject the marks of sannyas. His only thought is, where is there an opportunity to spread Krishna consciousness? Sometimes the Krishna consciousness movement sends its representative sannyasis to foreign countries where the danda and kamandalu are not very much appreciated. We send our preachers in ordinary dress to introduce our books and philosophy. Our only concern is to attract people to Krishna consciousness. We may do this in the dress of a sannyasi or in the regular dress of gentlemen. Our only concern is to spread the interest in Krishna consciousness. Oh wow, so Srila Prabhupada was okay with people dressing up in regular clothes. Avyakta lingo vyaktarto manishun matabalavat kavir mukavar atmanam sadrishtya darshayendrinam. Although a saintly person may not expose himself to the vision of human society, by his behavior his purpose is disclosed. To human society he should present himself like a restless child, and although he is the greatest thoughtful orator, he should present himself like a dumb man. Purport. A great personality, very much advanced in Krishna consciousness, may not expose himself by the signs of a sannyasi. To cover himself, he may live like a restless child or a dumb person, although he is the greatest orator or poet. Atrapyudaharantimam itihasam puratanam prahradasya cha sangvadam munir ajagarasya cha. As a historical example of this, learned sages recite the story of an ancient discussion between Pralada Maharaja and a great saintly person who was feeding himself like a python. Purport. The saintly person meant by Prahlāda Mahārāja was undergoing ajagara vritti, the living conditions of a python, which does not go anywhere but sits in one place for years and eats whatever is automatically available. Pralada Mahārāja, along with his associates, met this great saint and spoke to him as follows. Tang shayanam daropaste kaveryam sahyasanuni rajasvalaistanu deshar nigura malatejasam. One second. Tadasha lokam vicharan lokatattva vivitsaya vritomatyai katipayai prahrado bhagavat priya. Prahlāda Mahārāja, the most dear servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, once went out touring the universe with some of his confidential associates, just to study the nature of saintly persons. Thus he arrived at the bank of Kaveri, where there was a mountain known as Sahya. There he found a great saintly person who was lying on the ground, covered with dirt and dust, but who was deeply spiritually advanced. Karmana kritibirvacha lingarvana shamadibhi na vidanti jana yangvai sosav iti naveti cha. Neither by that saintly person's activities, by his bodily features, by his words, nor by the symptoms of his varnashram status could people understand whether he was the same person they had known. Purport. The inhabitants of that particular place on the bank of the Kaveri, in the valley of the mountain known as Sahya, were unable to understand whether that saint was the same man they had known. It is therefore said, Vaishnavera kriya mudra vigye na bujhai. A highly advanced Vaishnav lives in such a way that no one can understand what he is or what he was. Nor should attempts be made to understand the past of a Vaishnav. Without asking the saintly person about his previous life, Pralada Maharaja immediately offered him respectful obeisances. Tang natva bhyarchadvidivat padayo shirasa sprishan vivitsur idam aprakshin mahabhagavato sura. The advanced devotee Pralada Maharaja duly worshipped and offered obeisances to the saintly person who had adopted a python's means of livelihood. After thus worshipping the saintly person and touching his own head to the saint's lotus feet, Pralada Maharaja, in order to understand him, inquired very submissively as follows. Bibarshi kayam pivanam sodyamo bhogavanyata vitam chaivodyamat vatang bhogo vitavatang iha. Bhoginam kaludehoyam piva bhavati nanyata. Seeing the saintly person to be quite fat, Prahlāda Mahārāja said, My dear sir, you undergo no endeavor to earn your livelihood, but you have a stout body, exactly like that of a materialistic enjoyer. I know that if one is very rich and has nothing to do, he becomes extremely fat by eating and sleeping and performing no work. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did not like his disciples to become very fat in the course of time. He would become very anxious upon seeing his fat disciples becoming bhogis, or enjoyers of the senses. This attitude is herewith confirmed by Prahlāda Mahārāja, who was surprised to see a saintly person adopting ajagara-vritti, a saintly person adopting ajagara-vritti and becoming very fat. In the material world also, we generally see that when a man who is poor and skinny gradually endeavors to earn money through business or some other means, and he then gets the money, he enjoys the senses to his satisfaction. By enjoying the senses, one becomes fat. Therefore, in spiritual advancement, becoming fat is not at all satisfactory. There's many parts in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam previously where Srila Prabhupada's condemning fat people. Sorry. Okay. Nate shayanasya nirudyamasya brahmanuharto yata eva bhoga abhogino yam tava vipradeha piva yatastad vadana kshamam chet. Gives me some kind of joy because I'm used to the total opposite in India. Usually being fat is a good thing, being skinny is awful. Okay, O Brahman, fully in knowledge of transcendence, you have nothing to do, and therefore you are lying down. It is also understood that you have no money for sense enjoyment. How then has your body become so fat? Under the circumstances, if you do not consider my question impudent, kindly explain how this has happened. It's definitely not a question you could ask here in the West. How did you become so fat? Generally, those engaged in spiritual advancement take food only once, either in the afternoon or in the evening. If one takes food only once, naturally he does not become fat. My dad only eats once a day. The learned sage, however, was quite fat, and therefore Prahlāda Mahārāja was very much surprised. Because of being experienced in self-realization, a transcendentalist certainly becomes bright-faced. And one who is advanced in self-realization must be considered to possess the body of a Brahman. Because the bright-faced saintly person was lying down and not working, and yet was quite, Prahlāda Mahārāja was puzzled and wanted to question him about this. One second. Kavi kalpa nipuna drik chitra priya kata sama lokasya kurvata karma sheshetar vikshita piva. Your honor appears learned, expert, and intelligent in every way. You can speak very well, saying things that are pleasing to the heart. You see that people in general are engaged in fruitive activities, yet you are lying here, inactive. Purport. Prahlāda studied the bodily features of the saintly person, and through the saint's physiognomy, how do you say that? Physiognomy. Prahlāda Mahārāja could understand that he was intelligent and expert, although he was lying down and not doing anything. Prahlāda was naturally inquisitive about why he was lying there inactive. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Sa itam daitapatina pariprishta mahamuni smayamanastamabhyaha tarvag amritayantritaha. Narad Muni continued, when the saintly person was thus questioned by Prahlāda Mahārāja, the king of the Daitas, he was captivated by his shower of nectarian words, and he replied to the inquisitiveness of Prahlāda Mahārāja with a smiling face. Shri Brahmana Uvacha Vedeham Asura Shreshta Bhavananvarya Mata Iho Paramayor Nrinam Padanyadhyatma Chakshusha. Calls him Asura Shreshta. The saintly Brahman said, O best of the Asuras, Prahlāda Mahārāja, who are recognized by advanced and civilized men. You are aware of the different stages of life because of your inherent transcendental eyes, with which you can see a man's character and thus know clearly the results of acceptance and rejection of things as they are. Purport. A pure devotee like Prahlāda Mahārāja could understand the minds of others because of his pure vision in devotional service. A devotee like Prahlāda Mahārāja can study another man's character without difficulty. Yasya Narayana Devo Bhagavan Hridgata Sada Bhaktya Kevalaya Jnanam Dhunoti Dvantam Arkavat. Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of all opulences, is predominant within the core of your heart because of your being a pure devotee. He always drives away all the darkness of ignorance, as the sun drives away the darkness of the universe. Purport. The words Bhaktya Kevalaya, simply by executing devotional service, one can become full in all knowledge. Krishna is the master of all knowledge. Aishvarasya samagrasya viryasya yashasha shriya. The Lord is situated in everyone's heart. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridesher junatishtati. And when the Lord is pleased with a devotee, the Lord instructs him. Only to the devotees, however, does the Lord give instructions by which to advance further and further in devotional service. To others, the non-devotees, the Lord gives instructions according to the manner of their surrender. The pure devotee is described by the words Bhaktya Kevalaya. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that Bhaktya Kevalaya means Jnana Karma Amishraya, unmixed with fruit of activities or speculative knowledge. Simply surrendering at the lotus feet is the cause of all a devotee's enlightenment. It's the cause of all a devotee's enlightenment and awareness. It just says at the lotus feet. It doesn't say at the lotus feet of who, but yeah, it's the Lord. Tatapi brumahe prashnangs tava raja nyata shrutan sambhashaniyo hi bhavan atmana shuddhamichata. My dear king, although you know everything, you have posed some questions, which I shall try to answer according to what I have learned by hearing from authorities. I cannot remain silent in this regard, for a personality like you is just fit to be spoken to by one who desires self-purification. Purport. A saintly person doesn't wish to speak to anyone and everyone, and he is therefore grave and silent. Generally, a common man does not need to be advised. Unless one is prepared to take instructions, it is said that a saintly person should not address him, although sometimes, because of great kindness, a saintly person speaks to ordinary men. As for Prahlāda Mahārāja, however, since he was not a common ordinary man, whatever questions he posed would have to be answered, even by a great and exalted personality. Therefore, the saintly Brahmin did not remain silent, but began to answer. These answers, however, were not concocted by him. This is indicated by the words yatha shrutam, meaning as I have heard from authorities. In the parampara system, when the questions are bona fide and the answers are In the parampara system, when the questions are bona fide, the answers are bona fide. No one should attempt to create or manufacture answers. One must refer to the Shastras and give answers according to Vedic understanding. The word yatha shrutam referred to Vedic knowledge. The Vedas are known as Shruti because this knowledge is received from authorities. The statements of the Vedas are known as Shruti Praman. One should quote evidence from the Shruti, the Vedas are Vedic literature, and then one's statements will be correct. Otherwise, one's words will proceed from mental concoction. Trishnaya bhavavahinya yogyai kamar apuryaya karmani karyamanoham nanayonisho yojita. Because of insatiable material desires, I was being carried away by the waves of material nature's laws, and thus I was engaging in different activities, struggling for existence in various forms of life. Purport. As long as a living entity wants to fulfill various types of material desires, he must continuously change from one body to accept another. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that as a small piece of grass falls in a river and is tossed about with different types of wood and tree branches, the living entity floats in the ocean of material existence and is dashed and tossed amidst material conditions. This is called the struggle for existence. One kind of fruit of activity causes the living being to take one form of body, and because of actions performed in that body, another body is created. One must therefore stop these material activities, and the chance to do so is given in the human form of life. Specifically, our energy to act should be engaged in the service of the Lord, for then materialistic activities will automatically stop. One must fulfill one's desires by surrendering unto the Supreme Lord, for He knows how to fulfill them. Even though one may have material desires, one should therefore engage in the devotional service of the Lord. That will purify one's struggle for existence. Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradhi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the personality of Godhead. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 2.3.10. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavratam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttama. One should render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Lord Krishna favorably and without desire for material profit or gain through fruitive activities or philosophical speculation. That is called pure devotional service. It's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11. Text 25. Yadrichaya lokam imam prapita karma brahman svargapavargayor dvaram tirashcham punarasya cha. In the course of the evolutionary process, which is caused by fruitive activities due to undesirable material sense gratification, I have received this human form of life, which can lead to the heavenly planets, to liberation, to the lower species, or to rebirth among human beings. Purport. All living entities within the material world are undergoing the cycle of birth and death according to the laws of nature. This struggle of birth and death is different in different species, may be called the evolutionary process. But in the Western world, it has been wrongly explained. Darwin's theory of evolution from animal to man is incomplete because the theory does not present the reverse condition, namely evolution from man to animal. In this verse, however, evolution has been very well explained on the strength of Vedic authority. Human life, which is obtained in the course of the evolutionary process, is a chance for elevation, swarga pavarga, or for degradation, tirashcham punar asya cha. If one uses this human form of life properly, he can elevate himself to the higher planetary systems, where material happiness is many thousands of times better than on this planet. Or one may cultivate knowledge by which to become free from this evolutionary process and be reinstated in one's original spiritual life. This is called apavarga, or liberation. Material life is called pavarga because here we are subject to 5 different states of suffering represented by the letters pa, pa, bha, and ma. So just so that you understand better, in the Sanskrit alphabet, it's divided into groups called vargas. So the first varga of the alphabet is the ka varga, which is ka ka ga ga nga, and then the next is the the cha varga, which is cha cha ja ja nya. Then the ta varga ta ta da da na. Then the ta varga ta ta da da na. Anyways, and then comes the pa varga, which is pa, which means parishram, very hard labor. So pa stands for parishram. Fa means pena, or foam from the mouth. For example, sometimes we see a horse foaming at the mouth with heavy labor. Ba means byartata, disappointment. In spite of so much hard labor, at the end we find disappointment. Bha means bhaya, or fear. In material life, one is always in the blazing fire of fear, since no one knows what will happen next. Finally, ma means mrityu, or death. When one attempts to nullify these 5 different statuses of life, pa, ba, bha, and ma, one achieves apavarga, or liberation from the punishment of material existence. When you put an a before something in Sanskrit, then it makes it the opposite. So it's like, yeah. Pavarga is like material and apavarga is non-material. So let's just go over that again really quickly because this is a good thing. First one works very hard. It's parishram. And they even start to foam from the mouth, pena, because they're working so hard. And then, because they work so hard, but then they don't get any satisfaction. And there's all these problems. So then they become byartha, disappointed. And then after they become disappointed, then they start to feel afraid, bhaya. They start to, there's fear that I'm going to lose all these things that I've collected, or all my attachments, they're or friends and family die. You start to feel afraid, I'm going to die too. And then finally, mrityu, death. That's the pavarga. So the word, okay. The word chirashcham refers to degraded life. Human life, of course, provides an opportunity for the best living conditions. As Western people think, from the monkeys come the human beings, who are more comfortably situated. However, if one does not utilize his human life for swarga or apaka, he falls again to the degraded life of animals like dogs and hogs. Therefore, a sane human being must consider whether he will elevate himself to the higher planets, prepare to free himself from the evolutionary process, or travel again through the evolutionary process in higher and lower grades of life. If one works piously, one may be elevated to higher planetary systems, or achieve liberation and return home back to Godhead. But otherwise, one may be degraded to a life as a dog, a hog, and so on. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.25, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan. Those interested in being elevated to the higher planetary systems, Devaloka or Svargaloka, must prepare to do so. Similarly, if one wants liberation and wants to return home back to Godhead, he should prepare himself for that purpose. Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore the highest movement for the benediction of human society, because this movement is teaching people how to go home, back to Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 13.22, it is clearly stated that different forms of life are obtained by association with the three modes of material nature. Karanam guna sangosya sad asad yoni janmasu. According to one's association with the material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance in this life, in one's next life, one receives an appropriate body. Modern civilization does not know that because of varied association in material nature, the living entity, although eternal, is placed in different diseased conditions, known as the many species of life. Modern civilization is unaware of the laws of nature. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the performer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. That's Bhagavad Gita 3.27. Every living entity is under the full control of the stringent laws of material nature, but rascals think themselves independent. Actually, however, they cannot be independent. This is foolishness. A foolish civilization is extremely risky, and therefore the Krishna consciousness movement is trying to make people aware of their fully dependent condition under the stringent laws of nature, and is trying to save them from being victimized by strong Maya, which is Krishna's external energy. Behind the material laws is the supreme controller, Krishna, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa chara charam. It's Bhagavad Gita 9.10. Therefore, if one surrenders unto Krishna, mam eva ye prapadante mayam etang tarantite, one may immediately be freed from the control of external nature. Sa gunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. This should be the aim of life. Tatrapidang patinang cha sukayanya karmani kurvatam drishtva nivritosmi viparyayam. In this human form of life, a man and woman unite for sensual pleasure of sex. But by actual experience, we have observed that none of them are happy. Therefore, seeing the contrary results, I have stopped taking part in materialistic activities. Purport. As stated by Prahlāda Mahārāja, Yan maitunadi grihamedi sukam hitucham. That was from this same canto, 7th canto, chapter 9, verse 45. Man and woman both seek sexual enjoyment, and when they are united by the ritualistic ceremony of marriage, they are happy for some time, but finally there is dissension, and thus there are so many cases of separation and divorce. Although every man and woman is actually eager to enjoy life through sexual unity, the result is disunity and distress. Marriage is recommended to give men and women a concession for restricted sex life, which is also recommended in Bhagavad Gita by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharma viruddha bhuteshu kamosmi. Sex life not against the principles of religion is Krishna. Every living entity is always eager to enjoy sex life because materialistic life consists of eating, sleeping, sex, and fear. In animal life, eating, sleeping, sexual enjoyment, and fear cannot be regulated. But for human society, the plan is that although men, like animals, must be allowed to eat, sleep, enjoy sex, and take protection from fear, they must be regulated. The Vedic plan for eating recommends that one take yagya shishta, or prasad, food offered to Krishna. Yagya shishta shina santo muchyante samakil bishai. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food that is offered first for sacrifice. That's from Bhagavad Gita 3.13. In material life, one commits sinful activities, especially in eating, and because of sinful activities, one is condemned by nature's laws to accept another body, which is imposed as punishment. Sex and eating are essential, and therefore they are offered to human society under Vedic restrictions so that according to the Vedic injunctions, people may eat, sleep, and enjoy sex, be protected from fearful life, and gradually be elevated and liberated from the punishment of material existence. Thus, the Vedic injunctions for marriage offer a concession to human society, the idea being that a man and woman united in a ritualistic ceremony should help one another advance in spiritual life. Unfortunately, especially in this age, men and women unite for unrestricted sexual enjoyment. Thus they are victimized, being obliged to take rebirth in the forms of animals to fulfill their animalistic propensities. The Vedic injunctions therefore warn, Nayam deho deha bhajam nri loke kashan kaman arhate vir bhujam ye. One should not enjoy sex life like hogs and eat everything, even to the limit of stool. A human being should eat prasad offered to the deity and enjoy sex life according to the Vedic injunctions. He should engage himself in the business of Krishna consciousness. He should save himself from the fearful condition of material existence, and he should sleep only to recover from fatigue due to working hard. The learned Brahman said that since everything is misused by fruitive workers, he had retired from all fruitive activities. Okay, I think we're supposed to finish with this verse here. Sukam asyatmano rupam sarveho paratistanu manasang sparshajan drishtva bhogan swapsyami samvishan. The actual form of life for the living entities is one of spiritual happiness, which is real happiness. This happiness can be achieved only when one stops all materialistic activities. Material sense enjoyment is simply imagination. Therefore, considering this subject matter, I have ceased from all material activities and am lying down here. Purport. The difference between the philosophy of the Mayavadis and that of the Vaishnavas is explained herein. Both the Mayavadis and Vaishnavas know that in materialistic activities there is no happiness. Oops, I'm on the wrong internet connection. Anyways, almost finished. Has the internet been okay? Anyways, whatever. Let me just check really quick. Looks like it's been running okay. Okay. Let me just reread. Both the Mayavadis and Vaishnavas know that in materialistic activities there is no happiness. The Mayavadi philosophers, therefore, adhering to the slogan Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, wants to refrain from false materialistic activities. They want to stop all activities and merge in the supreme Brahman. According to the Vaishnava philosophy, however, if one simply ceases from material activity, one cannot remain inactive for very long, and therefore, everyone should engage himself in spiritual activities, which will solve the problem of suffering in this material world. It is said, therefore, that although the Mayavadi philosophers strive to refrain from materialistic activities and merge in Brahman, and although they may actually merge in the Brahman existence, for want of activity they fall down again into materialistic activity. Aruhya krichirena param padang tata padantada. That's Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 10.2.32. Thus, the so-called renouncer, unable to remain in meditation upon Brahman, returns to materialistic activities by opening hospitals and schools and so on. Therefore, simply cultivating knowledge that materialistic activities cannot give one happiness, and that one should consequently cease from such activities, is insufficient. One should cease from materialistic activities and take up spiritual activities. Then the solution to the problem will be achieved. Spiritual activities are activities performed according to the order of Krishna. Anukulena Krishnanushilanam. If one does whatever Krishna says, his activities are not material. For example, when Arjuna fought in response to the order of Krishna, his activities were not material. Fighting for sense gratification is a materialistic activity, but fighting by the order of Krishna is spiritual. By spiritual activities, one becomes eligible to go back home, back to Godhead, and then enjoy blissful life eternally. Here in the material world, everything is but a mental concoction that will never give us real happiness. The practical solution, therefore, is to cease from material activities and engage in spiritual activities. Yagyartart karmanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. If one works for the sake of pleasing the Supreme Lord, Yagya, or Vishnu, one is in liberated life. If one fails to do so, however, he remains in a life of bondage. We still have 4 minutes. Should we read another verse? Yeah, let's read another verse. Why not? Ittita ratmana svartam santam vismritya vaipuman vichitram asati dvaite ghoram apnoti sangsritim. In this way, the conditioned soul living within the body forgets his self-interest because he identifies himself with the body. Because the body is material, his natural tendency is to be attracted by the varieties of the material world. Thus, the living entity suffers the miseries of material. Purport. Everyone is trying to be happy because, as explained in the previous verse, Sukham asyat mano rupam sarve ho parataistanu. When the living entity is in his original spiritual form, he is happy by nature. There is no question of miseries for the spiritual being. As Krishna is always happy, the living entities, who are his parts and parcels, are also happy by nature. But because of being put within this material world and forgetting their eternal relationship with Krishna, they have forgotten their real nature. Because every one of us is a part of Krishna, we have a very affectionate relationship with him. But because we have forgotten our identities and are considering the body to be the self, we are afflicted by all the troubles of birth, death, old age, and disease. This misconception in materialistic life continues unless and until one comes to understand his relationship with Krishna. The happiness sought by the conditioned soul is certainly only illusion, as explained in the next verse. Okay, and we will read that next verse tomorrow. Well, let me just check one thing. How many verses are in this section? Goes up to 34. Yeah, we definitely can't make it up to 34. So let's just stop here. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Oh, that's how you say it. Physiognomy. It's physiognomy. Physiognomy. That's it. Physiognomy. Got it. All right. Thanks, Manjari. And these are interesting points that Prajumna Prabhu and Rup Manjari are writing. All right. Oh, and Haribo Champak Tidi. Dandavat pranams. Jai Shri Guru Gurangandharvika Giridhari Radha Vinod Bihari Ju Ki Jai. Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashatar Shatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashatar Shatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashatar Shatashmad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashatar Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Ashatar Shatashmad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Mahabhagavat Srila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Srila Raghunath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Balavatirtha Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Nitil Pavishtam Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopala Padadash Raghunath Shar Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Surup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda Ki Jai. Namachai Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Kshetra Mandala Gaura Mandala Vraja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Sarva Abhishta Pradati Giriraj Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Radha Kunya Shama Kun Ki Jai. Shri Muna Devi Ganga Devi Ki Jai. Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya Ki Jai. Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri, oh God, I should look this up. Shri Saranga Thakur Ki Jai. Tadiya Shubha, oh God, let me just check 1 second. Tadiya Shubha, is it Tiravav or Avivav? It is Tiravav. Tadiya Srila Saranga Thakur Ki Jai. Tadiya Shubha Tiravav Titi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samagata Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shinitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Oh, actually, wait, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripas. No, Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashta. Krishna Bhakti Padadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyai Vacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams. Rup Manjari sent me something from her Gurudev, some Harikatha from Srila Bhakti Balavatirtha Goswami Maharaj on Shiva Saranga Thakur. Maybe we should read that, huh? Let me just share my screen. Give me a second. It's not so long. Oh, Dandavat pranams, Nri Hari Prabhu and Pavatarani Mataji. Dandavat pranams, Haribo. Okay, so I'm going to read about Saranga Thakur for anybody who wants to stick around. But yeah, feel free to go. Okay. Where is it? There it is. Okay. How do I put this in reader view so you can see it? View, show reader. There. This is from the book by Srila Bhakti Balavatirtha Goswami Maharaj called Parishad. Right? What is it called? I forgot. In Bengali, it's called Gaur Parishad Charitavali, but I don't know what it's called in English. So this is Srila Saranga Thakur. Raje Nandi Mukhi Yasit Sadhya Saranga Thakura Prahlāda Manyate Kaishchin Matpitra Sa Namanyate. Vraja's Nandi Mukhi became Saranga Thakur in Gaur Lila. Some people say that he is Prahlād, but that is not the opinion held by my father. That's interesting. Okay, so wait, was Gaura written by, who's it written by? God, I should really know this. Is it Kavi Karnapur? No, I can't remember. If it's Kavi Karnapur, then that means Shivananda Sen. That's his father. But I really should know who wrote Gaura Ganadishtapika. God, I'm so embarrassed. Anyways, Sri Saranga Thakur is mentioned in the listing of branches of the Chaitanya trunk of the tree of devotional service, along with Ramdas, Kavidatta, Gopal Das, and Bhagavat Acharya. It's Chaitanya Charitamrita 110, 113. He is also known as Sharanga Thakur, and Sharangadhar, and Sharangapani. Can't tell if I'm saying it right because there's no diacritics, but anyways, yeah. He used to live in Godrumadweep, which is the island in Navadvip which represents, of the 9 types of devotional service, the service attitude. I don't know which island that's referring to. The name of the town is Mamgachi. Oh, okay, yes. Oh yeah, Saranga Thakur, obviously. That's right before, sorry, my mind's just going blank. Vrindavan Das Thakur's place there. He would sit in a secluded place by the banks of the Ganges to meditate and chant the holy names. Through these practices, he obtained many miraculous powers. At first, Saranga Thakur did not want to make any disciples for fear of disturbances to his bhajan, but Mahaprabhu repeatedly encouraged him to do so. The following account is given in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Abhidhan. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur writes in his Anubhashya, having been ordered by Mahaprabhu to take disciples, Saranga Thakur decided that he would make a disciple of the first person that he met the following morning. As fate would have it, the next morning a dead body washed up against him while he was taking bath in the Ganges. He revived the corpse and made him his disciple. This disciple was known as Thakur Murari, or sometimes as Sharanga Murari. In the Gaudiya Vaishnava Abhidhan, it is further said that Murari was a boy who had been killed by a snake bite, and his parents had set his uncremated body afloat on a raft in the Ganges, as was the custom in that time. Saranga Thakur himself became an empowered preacher of Mahaprabhu's Dharma. Descendants of his disciples still live in a village named Shava. Sharanga Thakur's deities were served in the town of Mamgachi. And the original temple was built in front of a bakula tree. The deities of Radha Gopinath can be seen in this temple, as can the deity of Mahaprabhu's other Parshad, Vasudev Datta Thakur, Sri Madan Gopal. The devotees who do parikrama of Navadvip Dham visit this temple for darshan. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur established a temple not far from the above-mentioned home of Sharanga Murari at the birthplace of Vrindavan Das Thakur. Saranga Thakur disappeared on the 13th day of the waning moon in the month of Agrahayan. An alternative opinion is that he disappeared on the Ashad Krishna Chaturdashi. Oh, Ashad. That says Ashad. I was like, what's Ashad? It's Ashad. This is from Sri Chaitanya, His Life and Associates by Srila Bhakti Vallabha Tirtha Goswami Maharaj. Alright. Jai Shri Saranga Thakur ki jai, Tatir Shubhatirubhav Titi ki jai. Alright, dear devotees, see you all tomorrow. Hari Bol. Oh, yes. I heard from, I forgot what his sannyasi name is, Prahlāda Prabhu though. He's telling me that they've made a lot of corrections, and there's lots of mistakes in the previous one, so it's a new edition. That will be probably a lot cheaper also, because that one by Mandala Media is quite expensive. Yeah, that's exciting. Okay, I was right. It was Kavi Karnapur. Okay, cool. So he's referring to his father, Shivananda Sen. Shivananda Sen doesn't say that Saranga Thakur is Pralada Maharaja then, huh? All right. Dandavat pranams, everybody. See you all tomorrow.